Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's your boy Steph J Millz. Look at this, we are back again, but this time we are here with the revamped guide to Camille. This is the season 10 updated guide by Steph J Millz. Now, this is incredible. I know it's been a long time since I've last updated my guide. You know, all the changes that's been going on. I've gotten so many questions. People have asked me, why do I go certain runes? Why do I go certain builds? And all those questions you guys have, I have finally put it all together in this revamped and updated guide. Everything is updated in terms of just champions, in terms of runes, keystones, item builds, anything you could think, anything you could think of for real. Because now I've taken so much time with putting all this stuff together and just making it so that this guide is as updated as possible with the meta, and so we also can continue to use this guide as well for any future changes. So this guide will be my permanent guide for the rest of however long until the game decides to stop running or something like that. But this will be updated for every season, and I will keep track as best as I can with all the updates that go on into the game. But we will be using this guide as a reference all the time. So if you want to contribute to this guide as well, like if you have any tips, if you have any advice, any tricks that you learned over the time of playing Camille, you can leave in the comment section below, and I will definitely update that for the next video. I still am planning on doing commentaries as well for little matchup guides in case you guys are struggling with a matchup and you want me to if you want to get my insights on how to deal with that matchup like I did before with the Jax, Darius, and the Mordekaiser matchup. So feel free to, if you want to contribute to this guide. Camille mains out there, anybody that's interested in playing Camille, I hope that this guide helps you guys out. Hope you guys learn a lot, and I am grateful for all the love and support. Like I always say, thank you guys so much for it. I cannot believe that, you know, just the type of attention that I've been getting lately. You know, with these montages that get made of me on YouTube, you know, the stream is getting bigger. You know, my YouTube channel is getting bigger. Like, we've reached 1K subs. We're actually over 1K subs currently right now, and I'm thankful for that so much. I believe we're at 1.5K, 1,500 subs. So I greatly appreciate that so much. On my Twitch channel, I believe we're at 2,200 followers. So that is just an accomplishment for me, because we're just breaking numbers now. Like, we're just growing from now on. Like, we're just constantly just growing, and I'm just so thankful for that, because when I first started off with this streaming stuff, I just didn't think that it was gonna pop off like this. So thank you guys once again for all the love and support. Now what we are going to do, we are going to move forward with the new updated the new Steph J Millz guide. Okay, so let's move forward. I hope you guys have a good time with this guide, because trust me, all the stuff that I put into it, I've had such a great time with this. So let's move on. So first things first, who is Steph J Millz? Well, I mean, Steph J Millz is the guy that you see on YouTube a lot, in case if you ever put down Camille. If you ever search Camille, if you don't know, then you'll pretty much figure out right now. So Steph J Millz is a 2 million mastery point Camille one-trick, who's also peaked at Grandmaster 245 LP at Season 9. So I am not a novice at this game. I've played this game for over 9 years and counting. I'm also a Twitch streamer, so you can follow me at twitch.tv/StephJMillz, and I'm arguably one of the greatest Camille players ever. Arguably. I never put myself to be the top player in the world. I will never do that, because that's putting myself too high on the pedestal. I have talent, I get that, I got skills, I got potential, but I never want to declare myself as the best. I do declare myself as one of the most versatile and most notable Camille players and such things like that, but I will never declare myself to be the top #1 best, no matter how many people say that. Like, I just don't agree with that, honestly. But I mean, hey, you know, I can't control what the people think. If they want to believe that I'm the greatest, then hey, they believe that I'm the greatest. You know, can't do anything about that. But also I wanted to showcase some of my strengths and my flaws as a player. So I have moments where I do great, and then I have moments where I mess up. We're human at the end of the day, so it's bound to happen. We are bound to making mistakes. So I'm not the perfect player, but I do analyze my flaws when I see them. So I will say my strengths. I am a high elo top main, so I know what I'm doing pretty much. I'm not a beginner. I played for over 9 years. Actually, I will say my start in ranked was I think I started ranked in season 4. So around season 4 was when I started ranked, and I've been playing ranked ever since. So I will say, for me to be considered a high elo player, I've been in diamond for only, well, I reached diamond for the first time, I believe, in season 8, because season 8 was when I started maining Camille, and then season 9, that's when I continued to main her, and that's when I've grown all the way to Grandmaster in that season. So I will say that within maining Camille and then growing from averaging gold elo to diamond in literally just 2 seasons, then going up to Grandmaster even further on, it's like that's impressive to me. So I definitely consider myself a high elo top main, because I've been in the high elo, I played against the pros, and I continue to play against the pros as well. So I have a versatile playstyle, so when you watch me, you see me pull off some crazy and interesting things, such as rune choices, such as like item builds, and just being very, very creative and experimentative with a lot of things that I do with the champion. Because I have 2 million mastery points, I should know some stuff, or should know some tricks, so there's a lot of moments where you might scratch your head though, might wondering like, why am I building certain things, or why am I doing this, like, but then when you see the effects of it, you're just like, oh, okay, I see. So I also have noteworthy mechanics. I mean, I've pulled off some interesting plays, especially my hook shot plays. Have you seen? There's been moments where I've done some incredible escape plays and done some incredible outplays. So my mechanics with Camille is very, very noteworthy. So you could definitely learn a thing or two from watching me, or even watching some of the videos that I post. I'm also a solo carry, so of course Camille herself is a solo carry champion. So when she pops off, when I pop off, I pop off. When I do well, I do well, and it shows. So definitely a really good solo carry. So when I'm in my zone, I'm just in my zone, and nobody can stand a chance against me. You know what I'm saying? I'm also untiltable. I will say that, because I'm not the one that tries to call FF15 when a mistake is made or when something bad happens in the game. Like, I'm not the one to quickly give up. I will say I might get to that point only if all my team members are giving up. If everybody's giving up, then I'll probably just have no choice but to give up. But other than that, though, I have a really, really strong mental, so it can't really break me. You can try to gank my lane a lot, you can try to farm me, camp me, or I could just be outplayed or something and be a little upset, but over time, the game's not over until the Nexus is taken, so you have an opportunity to come back, and there's been moments where I have came back from even the most crushing defeats early on. So definitely want to say I'm a very, very untiltable player. I also hold myself accountable, so accountability is one of the things that's a strength to me. So I actually am aware of when I make mistakes, or when I mess up, or when I do something wrong. So I'm aware of it. Like, I will announce it, and even on stream, like when I die, like I actually sit there and mention like what I died, like why I died. If anybody ever paid attention to that, I always talk about like what I did wrong, or what I should have did before I did that, or before I died, or such things like that. So I hold myself accountable for my mistakes, so that way nobody's gonna sit here and gonna constantly argue with me on what I did wrong, when I'm like, hey, I know what I did wrong, relax. And I'm also sentient as well, so that means I'm very, very responsive. I mean, I kind of put that to a certain degree, to be honest, because I'm a very quiet player, but I definitely still at least respond to the team. Like, if they need something, if they need me to split, if they need me to group, or I might give little conversations here and there. I'm trying to determine what the plan is. So I have some moments where I'm communicating with my team as best as I can, but naturally that's what happens when you're a solo player, when you're a solo queuer. So you just be on your own time, you be on your own zone and try to do things on your own time and not really follow your team. But sometimes it's like, hey, I know it's a team game, so we gotta work together, even if my champ could just solo carry the game herself. However, though, there's definitely some flaws to me though. So these is flaws that I consider to be true for myself. This is just me alone. If you see any flaws in me, you can definitely tell me, or leave in the comment section below. For those that have watched me play, and you've seen some of my crappiest moments. So if you want to definitely leave a comment below on what you believe is my flaws, I would definitely appreciate that too, because that's how I improve as a player. So for me, I say that I am a KDA player. That's actually one of the most common flaws that I have, that I am a KDA player, and I actually have admitted to that because I play for score. Not so much just to like not so much always play for score, but I more so have the mentality where it's like, if I'm losing the game, I don't want to seem like I lost with my team. Like, it's just my team that lost, not me. I was actually perfectly fine throughout that whole game. As you see, I was still 4-0 even though we lost. But sometimes being that KDA player trying to defend your score is like a bad thing, because you're not doing anything with your team because you're so cautious about your precious score, where you're refusing to make some plays. You're constantly doubting the team, thinking you're going to die, thinking you're going to give up the shutdown goal that you have to one of their carries or one of their dangerous teammates, you know. So it's like, sometimes I might I might just play for my score and then just leave it at that. Don't really care if I lose, because I'm just like, I mean, I'm going to most likely see these people anyway in this elo, so it's like not like they're really going anywhere, not like we're going anywhere to begin with. So I will also say inconsistency is one of my flaws as well. Like, there's moments where I've done so well in the game, I would win, I would just stomp, I would do really good, and then somehow in that same game I would just flop starting late game, where I would just make a mistake, or I die once and then everything goes downhill. I'll just have some unlucky moments, or it just be weird, or I'll just make a mistake early and just lose from that and just be really far behind, but then come back later in the game off of something, you know, off the team just making a bad play, then I came back from that. Some stuff like that. Like, it's this weird inconsistent pattern. Like, I've had moments where I was on win streaks, but even after getting off those win streaks, I would be like probably like 3 losses in a row right after that. Like, it's a weird inconsistent pattern. That's why I've also had trouble with climbing in the ranks as well, because there's a lot of inconsistency with me and just with teams as well. So I always, like I say, I'm not always one to say that's always my team. I would say there's a good percentage of my losses have come from me myself. So that's why I even mention my flaws, because my flaws contribute to those losses. Being passive is another thing that I consider a flaw, because I have this habit of just waiting a little, maybe too long, because the way I see it, when I'm going against a certain matchup, I'm looking at it and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna outscale you anyway, so it's not like I have to even really try, you know, or I try to make the lane easier for myself, that way I can get to my prime on time, you know, without any real setbacks, or without my laner pressuring me so much to where I can barely get to it or barely do anything. So I might play passive and just go for the farm game, and I've had people complain to me about that in game, like, are you just gonna sit here and farm, dude? I'm just like, I mean, yeah, because I'm gonna beat you later, so it doesn't really matter. Like, I can sit and farm, you can sit and farm, but you're still not really just gonna beat me when I'm all the way scaled up. So I know what I'm building too, so you know, you're not gonna beat me. So I might just sit and wait too long, and then sometimes I might just have this thing, I might just be living off faith for one too many times, where I'm just like, maybe I'll have faith, you know, that my team will come through, or something magical is gonna happen. So I might just wing it off faith. I might just try to wing it on faith a little bit too much, and that isn't really good as a player, so I admit to that. I'm also arrogant. I've had moments where I've been cocky. I've had moments where I just felt like I was maybe just too much better than I was just better than my team, or just felt like because of the elo that I'm in, that, you know, everybody just sounded like another one of these like hard stuck players, where it's just like, oh, it's not me, it's them, it's all that, I'm doing everything right, and then my team is just inting and just trolling all the time. And, you know, the common excuses on why they can't climb is saying because everybody else. So I've had moments where I admit to it when I see it. I admit to it when I literally get the when I literally see the reasons why I'm like not doing so well in this elo, or not doing so well in climbing, because it's like you can actually see it happen on stream. But sometimes, of course, then it would be me, from my attitude or my arrogance, to get me cocky, that will make me cocky, and then I would make a mistake, and then it would cost me the rest of the game, or it would actually cost me the whole game for making a mistake. So I admit to that. Gotta work on that. And as a flip side to being arrogant, I'm also hesitant as well. That also applies to me being a KDA player. I'm hesitant to even like go for plays that I should go for, just out of fear, like maybe if I die, or I don't know if it's a good idea. And then of course I'm looking at the team comp and I'm feeling like if I try to dive in on the carries, they have a ton of peel, they're gonna ult me, they're gonna blow everything on me, and then when I die, then if I feel like my team is just not gonna follow up after I'm dead, and then it will be aced and then the game will be over. So that's definitely some things that you want to take note of when you think of me or when you watch me. Other roles that I play mid lane, I play support, and I play AD carry. I am not a jungler. I will never be a jungler. I don't think I will ever have the capabilities of being a jungler in this game. Just the amount of attention that you have to detail on the maps, and you gotta have control of the dragons, you have the control of the scuttles, you have to have just you have to watch for the lane priorities and such things. You gotta gank for everybody. It's just like, nah, I can't do that. Even Camille was a jungler at one point, but they nerfed it because it was too strong at one point. Her win rate, I believe, had just skyrocketed from her being played in the jungle somewhere, and then they nerfed it down because they just wanted her to be strictly a solo laner and not a jungler anymore. So thanks, Riot, for that one. So yes, that's definitely some information about me. It's the boy Steph J Millz. I hope you guys learned a little bit more about me. And let's move on to more information about Camille. So, what is Camille? Camille is one of the best carries and best scaling champions in the game, packed with incredible mechanics and massive damage. She is an extremely versatile champion with incredible potential to best all champions in the game and bring a swift and clean victory for her and her team. However, this champion's skill level is 3 stars. So, this champion is not easy, but very, very intuitive, I will say. The pros to Camille: she has a hyper solo carry. She deals true damage. She has high mobility. She has great map pressure. She has versatility. She has savage quotes, which means she just talks smack about anybody that comes in her vicinity. Like, she's one of the champions that responds to people's quotes and responds to their jokes and such things like that. So she is interesting playing a champion that's just constantly talking and like just full-blown sentences when you're fighting. So that's one thing I like about her. Is a lot of her quotes is very, very interesting to hear. And she's also very rewarding. Her being a high skill cap champion, when you do so well with her, it shows. It is very rewarding. You will get praise for doing so well with a champion that takes so much skill and so much brain power to understand. So very, very rewarded indeed. Cons though, of course, being a high skill cap champion, she is just not easy to play. So it might feel like she's easy. Like, when you might look at her for the first time, you might feel like she doesn't seem so complicated, but when it comes to like actually understanding her and playing her and just knowing how to like coordinate, your abilities and just overall just team play, then you'll understand that this champ takes some strategic play. On top of being the high skill cap champion, she has high expectations. So every time you play this champion, I promise you they're going to be expecting you to carry the game, because this champion is meant to carry games. So this champion, of course, knowing that you have to have a brain to play, they're going to expect for you to know what to do. And when you don't know what to do, when you make too many mistakes with this champion, then you just won't be able to do anything. Unfortunately, you will definitely get raged at, and you will definitely get hit with the FF15 because of the top difference. Because you decided the first time this champion in ranked or something like that. Like, don't do that. Take some time to practice. Whether it be bots or whether it just be normal games, just take some time to practice with this champion to get a feel for it. Because there's gonna be a lot that you gotta understand with her. She also suffers from what I call the early game sickness, which means she's one of the weakest early games in the game out of all champions. She's one of the weakest ones. This is actually a trade-off for her being so super strong later on though, so she has to have a setback, or she has to have a flaw at some point, and it's always early game that's her flaw. So she does have some good roaming and good ganking potential to get herself a lead, but most of the matchups that she faces in the lane, like such as top lane, it's just, she just suffers so much because this is not much that she can do until she gets to her prime, until she gets close enough to her prime, if that. And there's so many laners that can just shut her down and prevent her from getting to it. So the early game sickness is something that tends to get abused. So you have to learn how to not get too abused, you know, because these laners out here, these juggernauts, these bruisers, and these incredible these early game champions is taking over, you know. If you can keep up the pressure and just keep snowballing further on. And also another side effect is that she is easily punishable. So not only not knowing how to play her, you know, is one thing, but also just making mistakes in general is also very punishing, such as if you miss an ability, if you just engage at the wrong time, or just try to get a little too aggressive and then you leave yourself open. It's just like, you know, you're just regretting things like, darn, and then you realize those mistakes are setting you back because you just can't get to your prime as fast as you should, because you have to work twice as hard now because you done messed up too many times. Not only that, she has hard comebacks on top of that too. It's like, it's hard to come back with a champ like her when she's behind. There's certain champs that can come back just by getting like one item or getting half an item or something, or just in the nature of their kit, like they're just designed to be able to eventually just come back and be a champion again. But for her, it's like, if you're behind, she's not a champion. She can't do anything. I mean, like, you might have, if you have to be blessed with some lucky moments to be able to really come back with her, because if they really know how to set you back, you can't do much about it, and it's just unfortunate. So you'll have to rethink your strategy for next game in terms of how to not be set that far back again. So, and like I said earlier, she's item dependent, so she's the type champ that has to have at least mostly, in order to like just outright beat most champions, she has to have her core items. Like, her primary items is Triforce, like Ravenous Hydra and Sterix Gauge, to be able to just outright beat anybody in the game, though. Anybody. But of course, before she gets that, though, there's just a lot of champions that she's not going to be able to just outright beat unless she plays well and they play poorly, or, you know, unless they just don't know what they're doing. But yeah, she's very item dependent and also team reliant. So she can solo carry games, but unfortunately, she still needs a team to be able to coordinate with. So if her team is doing bad, she needs to make sure, she needs to hope that her team can at least stay decent for a little bit. So in case she needs to just split push, or if she wants to try to hurry up and like pull some pick plays to be able to catch the carries and give her team a lead themselves or something like that. So she's definitely team reliant to be able to coordinate with, but if their team is just not coordinating with her, then there's just not much that she can do, because everybody will be far ahead of her, and it's not much that, you know, Camille can do in a 1v5 situation if everybody's like the same level as her or even a little bit ahead of her, because her team is just constantly falling short. So also, Camille has the ability to negate almost all crowd control abilities in the game. This is one of the special things about Camille, because her hook shot gives her the ability to buffer CC. So this means when you get rooted, when you get pulled, it's like when you get rooted, when you get knocked up, knocked back, if you get stunned, if you get suppressed, if you well time your hook shot before it hits the wall, if you've seen in my little hook shot tutorial videos, showcases just how you can continue, you can still get pulled, you can actually still move even in the middle of any crowd control abilities. So it all requires well timing on that. And as well as, Camille is also listed as a diver champion. So this is, if anybody had this misconception that Camille is one of the fighter champions, you're wrong. Camille is a diver champion, which is essentially a subclass to the fighter champion. She was a quick damage dealer with fast escape, much like an assassin, but with a bit more durability. So Camille can actually stand a little toe-to-toe with people, like more than an assassin can. Like, think of like Talon, for instance. Like, she can stand more in a toe-to-toe fight than like Talon. Talon is just mostly for quick burst fights, and then, you know, being able to just kill his target in a few seconds or just escape when he needs to. Camille, on the other hand, can still stay in a fight with just good kiting and also having a good passive to be able to trade with people better. You know, our passive is for defense, applies a physical shield or a magical shield to whatever damage type that you were last dealt with. So that's definitely potent when it comes to dueling people. But most of the time, Camille is mostly just going for short, bursty trades, keeping her distance for a short amount of time, and then returning back into the fight. So So I hope this teaches you guys a little bit more about Camille. So now we will move on to the runes and the items. Now I know this definitely looks a heck of a lot different compared to the last one you guys saw on the episode 2, I believe, right? So now looking at the runes, item builds, and summoner spells, we're going to be looking at what's recommended. This is what's recommended for anybody that's starting out with Camille. This is the recommended rune page right here. The item builds, summoner spells, this is all recommended for if you're trying to first time Camille. So if you want to figure out what runes you should go, you should always go between Conquer or Press the Attack. We're going to refer to Conquer or Press the Attack as the bread and butter combination. So that's just the general route that you would go. We're going to refer to Grasp of the Undying as Superior Camille. So that's more for novice. That's more for novice players that want to give like that might not be too good with her, but want to have like an easier time in lanes to be able to understand her better, to understand her strengths and flaws, and then work their way around to go on the general route. So we'll refer to that as Superior Camille. In Arcane Comet, we refer to that as the heal drop. This technique is more so meant for if you're going against like squishy laners, like ranged laners and such things. You want to have like a little bit of poking to your kit. So you would go Arcane Comet or the heal drop technique. So the recommended summoner spells, of course, are Flash and Teleport, because the current meta, if you're a top laner, you just have to go Flash and Teleport, no questions asked, especially as a champion like Camille that can have good map pressure as well, so she needs Teleport, especially if she's going for split pushing and roaming. Now looking at the starting items, if you want to wonder what items you want to start with, you could start with Duran Blade, you could start with Duran Shield, Longsword with 3 potions, or start Corrupting Potion. So the starting items will always vary on the opponent, and also will vary on how well you know how to play Camille to know how to like tap into your strengths more. So if you want to deal more damage or feel like you can actually be a little bit aggressive into a lane that you are confident against, then you can go different. You can go starting off differently, like going for a longsword first, or just going straight for your items first, such things like that. The early game items as well, you would always be rushing a Tiamat, and you would get Sheen or Phage after. It's more so of like whatever you feel like is best for you. Most of the time you would go actually with Tiamat and Sheen, because Sheen actually is really good with getting early for her Q damage. But those would be the early items that you are focusing on getting. You can also be getting your refillable potion, and you can also, whatever boots is required for the matchup, whether it be Merc Treads, whether if you're going against a lot of AP, if you're going against AP top laners, or if you're going against AD top laners, you will revert to Ninja Tab. And then below we have some example builds on what a full build would look like. Looking at the core items though, the Trinity Force is a must-have at all times. That is the most required item with Camille. You cannot play Camille and not build that item. Who in the world will want to play Camille and never build Triforce? That's something that's just not clicking with me. I might have tested before, but no, you just need that item all the time. I'm sorry. It has everything that it needs for Camille to be in the prime that she's in late game. So Ravenous Hydra is also another core items for maximum damage and sustain. Usually it was a battle between going Titanic Hydra, I believe, right? Titanic Hydra or Ravenous Hydra. Most have found Ravenous Hydra for the most maximum damage and the most sustain out of it, especially since Ravenous Hydra was recently updated to give more sustain. So this is definitely a staple to her build as well. And then Sterix Gauge, which enhances durability and scaling damage. So this makes you more of a frontline champion as well, and it gives you a nice little scaling amount of damage as well. So definitely something that's definitely needed for Camille. And once you get those 3 core items, as when you look back at the example build, you can build whatever you want, honestly, after those 3 items. Like whatever you feel like is good for the matchup, or whatever you feel like is good for the team. Like, you know, like for instance, example build number 1, we have Death's Dance after Sterix Gauge, we have Edge of Night, and then we have the Ninja Tabby. So yeah, it just varies on whatever you're going against. And you can go for a tank-like build, and like the example number 2, you can have Dead Man's Blade, you can have Warmog's Armor, and then have Merc Treads and such things. And example build number 3, if you're trying to go for a super carry route, like if you're trying to maximize on your damage to its fullest potential, then this will be more for squishies as well. Then you would go Bork, you go Blade of the Ruined King, and then you can even get a Bloodthirster if you're that fed, you know. So looking over to the rune paths, so if you're trying to figure out what runes that you should go naturally, you can go whichever. In the bread and butter combination, you would have press the attack or conquer, whichever you choose. You would have triumph, you have bloodline, you have coup de grace. You would also combine it with inspiration. You would have magical footwear or time work tonic, or you would have resolve if you want more defense. If you want more defense, and you would have shield bash and bone plating. Also for the shards, you would go double adaptive forces, or you would go double adaptive forces, and you would go armor, or you would go magic resist, whatever for whatever matchup you're going against. For the superior Camille, you would also be going the grass build, shield bash, bone plating, overgrowth, and then doing the same with inspiration, magical footwear, time work tonic, or precision secondary for triumph or bloodline. So it's more so of just like whatever. This is more so I feel like is the general route that most Camille players would go when it goes through these different styles. So it's more so of like, this is for anybody that just is learning Camille, you know, and just wants to have like a general, like a fallback, like something to fall back on, you know, as like, you know, what they should do, you know, in case they ever get lost. So you can refer to these styles as the generic styles for you if you're first starting out with Camille. So for the heal drop, you would go Arcane Comet, Mana Flow Band, Absolute Focus, and Scorch to maximize on your poke damage and have some sustain for mana. And you can go Resolve Secondary. This is more so for if you're going against a lot of ranged or a lot of poke champions, or champions that have like champions that are immobile that you can actually just like, you know, pretty much harass pretty early on to give them a hard time. Resolve Secondary, give you second wind and revitalize for some extra sustain, and Precision Secondary if you're trying to go for a more of a dueling approach and having coup de grace or going for bloodline. And of course, all the shards are pretty much the same regardless of which style that you go. Other viable options, however, I will say that you can go Overheal, Alacrity, Tenacity, Last Stand. This is in the Precision tree. For the Resolve tree, you can go Demolish. I personally don't really go Demolish, but I actually see the interest in it because it gives you a lot of lane pressure for sure, because you can take turrets down a lot faster, so your split pushing would be dangerous. You can also go Unflinching for cooldown for I believe it's Tenacity, right? Or extra tenacity for every summoner spell that you have on cooldown, and you get a burst of it for every summoner spell that's used in. You get a burst of it when you use summoner spells for a good 10 seconds, I believe. And then in the sorcery tree, we can go Nullifying Orb, we can go Nimbus Cloak, we can go Celerity or Transcendence, and in Inspiration, if you were looking to go Futures Market or even go maybe Approach Velocity, you could go that as well. Those are viable choices. I don't see nothing wrong with them, and I'm hoping nobody sees anything wrong with it. If they do, then I understand. You can leave in the comment section below if you have any suggestions in terms of what should be changed or what you feel like is the most recommendation for rune paths. So I hope that this helps you guys out in terms of starting out with Camille and how to build her and how to and what to actually do with her in terms of like item wise and runes and such things and summoner spells. So now we will move on to learning the skill order. So the skill order kind of varies on the matchup though. As you see on the right, I returned the ability overview that I had from, I believe it was episode 2. So if you want to check back on what the abilities do, you can just sit there and you can look at that whole list right there. But determining what skills that you want to level, most recommended that you start your W first. You start your W, then you level your E, and then you last get your Q. That's within the first levels of 1 to 3. So the level up focus though, level up focus varies on what style that you're going. If you're going the bread and butter style, which is the press the attack or conquer style, you can most likely you'll be maxing either your E, your hook shot, or your Q, your precision protocol. So that's pretty much the 2 skills that you would be focused on maxing. However, most of the time the most recommended would be the maxing your E. That's up to you though. Most of the time you can actually choose between maxing E and Q, because E is more so just having for lesser cooldown, not only to increase the damage of it as well, but having it as a lesser cooldown to be able to have it all time or having more often, so that way you can use to engage or use to escape more often. Or If you're looking to do more damage with just short trades with your Q, you would be maxing your Q. If you know how to trade well with your Q without needing to use your hook shot all the time, then you could be maxing your Q as well to get the most out of that damage. Versus Superior Camille, that's the grasp style, the grasp of the Undying style, so you can actually be maxing Q with that, because most of the time you'll be proccing your grasp and your shield bash, and you'll be actually a bit more tanky and more durable to where you'll be able to actually pull off some devastating one-hit trades in the lane. This is through the early and mid game as well, so it's more so for early game advantage against strong laners or laners that you feel like you might have problems with, that you want to have at least a better lead against, you know, for if you're starting out with learning how to play her. And then the heal drop technique, you would actually be putting early points into your W, so you'll be leveling up your W at least 3 points in to give some really good early damage poke. And then you would actually just max your hook shot right after those 3 points. However, in some cases you can max your W. It's nothing wrong with doing that. Actually, I take that back. There is a setback to maxing your W, is that your W will be your primary source of damage, which essentially the damage from W isn't quite useful mid and late game. More so just noticeable for early game, but as everybody scales up, or as everybody levels up and everybody gets more stats and gets tankier and such things like that, your W will not really be able to be up to par with the damage that you could be doing. So you'll definitely be set back on damage for a bit if you're maxing your W, but it will take some time. You will still scale up and you will still reach your prime, but you're just gonna have to rely on your W a little bit for some damage from now on. So just be sure to be mindful of that. And you can level your ultimate whenever you can. I will say that I don't level my R whenever. I level it when it first comes up, of course, at level 6, but I don't level it up after that. I level it up last. So that means I level up one of my main abilities first before I max out my ultimate. Interesting technique. I know it's very weird. The reason why I do that is because since I realized that my ult doesn't really do much for me. Only thing it does is extend the duration, maybe an extra like half a second or an extra second or something, and it just gives a little bit of extra bonus damage. The bonus damage itself from basic attacks is not as noticeable as you would think. So the way I see it, I use it mostly just for escaping or just to, you know, lock down somebody. So I don't really see the purpose in actually just maxing it right away, you know, if it's already useful in its own right. So I would actually just save that until last. So I would max either one of my main abilities first. So I hope that this helps you guys out in terms of learning of what skills you want to level up and what skills that you should focus on maxing. So now we will move on to the intensive matchup difficulties. So we will be starting out with the easy matchups. The easy matchups, essentially you have high advantage, free of pressure, and will obliterate them in your prime. These matchups are pretty much people that you will have no trouble against, well, little to no trouble against if you know what you're doing. Even if you're starting out with Camille, if you kind of have like a small sense to know what to do, you know, these matchups won't be that big of a deal to you, you know, because if you don't know what you're doing with Camille, 9 times out of 10, maybe the person that you're playing against might not know what they're doing with their champ, depending on what elo you're in. But you don't want to first time Camille against some easy champions, because you can actually lose against them if you just don't know what you're doing. But when you do know what you're doing, these champions are like of little to no problem, you know, in terms of just like how to deal with them in the lane, and just overall when you're in your prime, you just outscale and just beat them completely. So as you see at the top, the most effective styles against all these champions is the bread and butter style, and the heal drop, more so for the ranged top laners like Gnar or Quinn, for instance. But most of them you outscale and you can outshine. The attention notice right there, you can see these champions are champions that actually can prove to be a bit of a problem if they know what they're doing with their champions. Such things like Garen, for instance. Of course, his changes, the changes that's been made to Garen, the changes that's been made to Garen has made him a very he's a bully in the lane, so he could definitely be a problem. But in terms of you know what to do against him, in terms of kiting him, he will be little to no problem. But he definitely can be a little. He could be a nuisance. Same with Yasuo. Yasuo players have to be 100% on some faker type stuff, or what's his name? Well, he gotta be like Mo, or be on that Yasuo type stuff, you know, like he gotta be on that to know for him to actually be someone that you have to have an eye on. As well as Gnar. Gnar is a range champion. The difference between Gnar and Quinn is that Quinn is more squishier, and you can actually just outright beat her within a few items, you know, as long as you don't make too many mistakes, or just, you know, as long as you know what you're doing. Gnar, for instance, he's more of a tank, and he's also got like a little bit more, he's a little bit more mobile, a little bit more quicker, has a little bit more, I want to say, he's a little bit more oppressive in the lane because he's got his transformations. So if he knows how to manage his transformations and knows how to play safe, knows how to harass well, then he can actually be a nuisance in the lane as well. Yorick is also another one that could be a nuisance because his lane pressure, even though he's actually easy to deal with in the lane, him as a champion himself is a problem because he just he can actually take control of the lane. He gets free minions, so, and he gets an ult that actually stays permanent unless it dies. So, you know, that gives him a ton of pressure in the game, in the lane, and also through the game because he's one of the best split pushers in the game. So he could definitely be a nuisance to deal with. And Vladimir's as well. Vladimir's can be a nuisance as well, even though Vladimir's early game is just as weak as yours, but his is actually more weaker than yours, so you can actually abuse him. But if they know what they're doing, if they know how to play safe, and if they know how to pretty much deny your engages with their blood pools, then they can definitely prove to be a problem as well. I also have below Nasus and Kale. Both of them are easy in the early game because those are champions that are super scaling just like you, but you just have a little leverage over them in the laning phase because of your kit. But in the early game, those guys are pretty easy to beat as long as you know what you're doing, as long as you know how to make them deny the farm, know how to apply the pressure to them in the lane, know how to manipulate the wave on them as well, to where they can't farm up, to where they can't go and get their items, such things like that. So they are actually easy in the early game. Now, let's move on to the moderate matchups. Now, looking at the moderate matchups, you are at risk of pressure depending on the player's skill. You can be defeated early, but can win in your prime. So, as you see the moderate matchup, there's a ton more people here, a lot more people in this one. So, looking at so I will say, let's start off on the caution list. The caution list is those are the guys that you really need to make sure you watch out for, especially if they are skilled with a champion, or it's just in the nature of their kit to where they have a very oppressive early game to where they can actually harass you and make problems for you, so that way you can't do much in the late, you can't do much to get to your prime. So looking at Riven players, if a Riven is on some box level, then you will definitely have quite a rough time if they know what they're doing, know how to trade, and know how to fight well. Alaois, you also want to be cautious of Alaois because of her pressure in the lane. The pressure of an Alaois from her tentacles is just atrocious, especially if she gets a kill, if she gets a lead, then she just takes control of the whole lane. She just has so much pressure from tentacles. She can pull your spirit out, and when she pulls your spirit out, it's a fight or flight situation when it comes to that. If she's level 6 or if she doesn't have her ult yet and she pulls your spirit, you can kind of contest for a fight. That's dependent on how many tentacles is surrounding her. If too many tentacles are surrounding her and she's hitting all her spells on you and the spirit that she pulled, then you will not win those fights at all. So you might as well just take flight every time she pulls you out. Rise players, I mean, Rise has always been broken since day one, apparently, right? Like, I mean, you know, it's Rise, so even though Camille actually is like supposed to really beat Rise, and I admit because Rise is actually not that hard to deal with, but of course when you run into the Rise players that just are just one tricks, you know, and just know exactly the ins and outs of their champion, they can prove to be quite difficult in the lane, you know, especially if they're aware of knowing how to deal with the Camille matchup. They know that Camille's going to try to play super aggressive against him because they know that she can do that. So they, of course, if they're playing safe and they're scaling up, when he scales up to his late game prime, then he actually can be a problem as well to deal with. So looking at next, we have Lucian. Whenever you see ranged top laners, they are always a problem, but there are some ranged top laners that are just straight, just not even fair sometimes, you know. So Lucian is another top laner that you want to be cautious against. You might not see him that often, but when you do, it's actually very annoying in terms of his pressure in the lane. He also has the bush cheese where he just hides into the bush and waits for you to walk up the farm before applying the pressure from autos and his Qs and then using his dash. and such things, just to get his passive procs as well. So you might want to be careful for him. Then you have Wukong. Wukong, recent changes have made him a problem in the lane now. I mean, he used to not be a champion, so they pretty much made him a champion again with the recent changes. When he is level 6, he has an insane power spike with his ult, being able to recast it twice. He can recast it twice. It's just like, nah, son, I can't contest for that power spike. A lot of these champions, you have to respect their power spikes as well, so you have to understand that there's champions that you're not going to be able to just outright beat until you get a specific item, or until you get your specific items, or unless you're performing well against them to where you're actually pretty ahead to where they can't contest with you in your prime. But there's definitely champs like Wukong, for instance, that can stand toe-to-toe with you if he's doing extremely well, given the fact that he also got recently changed in his kit. And another problem with Wukong is his clone as well, so it's hard to engage on a Wukong that constantly knows how to send out his clone to be able to negate your engages. Moving on to Irelia, we have Irelia is essentially just like Riven. If they are a one-trick Irelia player who know the ins and outs of the lane, knows the ins and outs of the Camille matchup, then they will prove to be a problem. There's somebody you got to be cautious for. Even though you do defeat her in your prime, she definitely can defeat you early on, and she can actually snowball to where you can't defeat her for a while until you actually get yourself back up. So Irelia, for instance, she has a lot of pressure on you in terms of utilizing the minion wave for engaging. A lot of Irelias like to last hit Qs. Like to use their Qs to last hit for the minions and then close in for an engage on you to reset her Qs. And as well as they have a ton of pressure on you in the lane, not to mention they have a lot of kill pressure onto you as well. So she has everything she needs to kill you, but she has to land everything to kill you. So if you know how to dodge everything, all of her abilities are essentially dodgeable as well. So if you know how to dodge her main abilities, such as her stun and her ult, then you will actually dominate that lane. Tryndamere is another cautious matchup because Tryndamere is in the nature of him, he's just a laner that just scales up and just can't die. So it all becomes just how long you can stand Tryndamere in terms of just kiting him and just how much damage you can take before his ult wears off type stuff. So Tryndamere will like to play reckless, and they like to just rush in and just go all in because all he does is auto attack. So if he can apply constant pressure to you with his spins and keep gap closing into you in the lane, then you will find yourself having problems. If you're trading with him while he has 100% Fury, a lot of times you will lose those trades because he has maximum crit chance. So you will not want to do that. You want to take advantage of when his Fury is low. Poppies used to be, I listed Poppies as a hard counter once before in my previous guide. However, I lowered it down to the moderate, but she's still cautious though because Poppy players can play. Poppy essentially can still counter Camille in the sense because she can't use her hook shots when she's around her. Poppies can negate anybody's mobility, and she has the ability to negate Camille's ult as well by just knocking her out of it too. So essentially though, those are the only really problem with Poppy players. But Poppy herself is not really that strong against Camille though. She can't stand toe to toe with Camille, especially in her prime. Camille will outscale her, but the amount of pressure that Poppy has is very intense to where she's definitely a cautious laner. Kennen's tops as well. If you see Kennen tops, Kennen is actually a very impressive laner as well in terms of him being ranged, just like Lucian for instance, and him also being able to apply stuns by being able to apply his mark stacks very fast with his auto attacks, or just hitting with his Qs, or if he hits you with his I believe if he hits you with any of his abilities, they'll apply a stack, and then of course he can turn that into a stun. So it depends. You gotta be mindful of how many stacks is on you, and be very, very mindful of when the stun is going to be active. So and he also has the ability to kind of counter your ult in a sense as well, because his ult can just trap you and stun you so many times to where it's hard for you to even do anything to either escape or to either fight him. So his pressure in the lane is very oppressive, so you want to proceed with caution with that. I didn't list Shen in my last guide because he was one of the champions that I didn't really see too much in the top lane. I always looked at Shen as a champion that you don't really main. There's only a few one-tricks or a few Shen mains out there, I will admit, or at least I would believe actually. But most of the time Shen is like a pocket pick. The way I see it, he's like a pocket pick, somebody that you just pick for a team comp or something like that. That's just the way I see it. You know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Shen himself is actually you want to proceed with cautious against Shen in terms of how to deal with him in the lane. He's actually pretty oppressive as well. He has really good early game damage. He has shields to be able to protect himself from a ton of your damage as well. He can also block your autos and your Qs as well. So if a Shen knows how to trade with you well, knows how to utilize his taunt to pretty much negate your hook shots or just use it to just engage into a fight, because not only he's actually a good duelist, he's also pretty tanky as well. So he's actually one of the not only is he a tank, but he's actually one of the few fighter champions that can actually like really stand toe to toe with Camille, even when she's in her prime, you know, because he's tanky as well. So Shen is also someone you want to be cautious with. But other than that, the rest of the list stands as moderate matchups that isn't really too difficult, you know, unless you just don't know what you're doing, but they can definitely prove to have some pressure on you if they know what they're doing with their champion. Like Kled, for instance. Olaf tops is a little rare now because Olaf is primarily in the jungle, but if you definitely see Olaf in the top lane, he can definitely apply some pressure to you because he has some strong early game pressure, but you eventually will outscale him and beat him completely. Same with Urgot, Heimerdingers, Skarners, Singed, Aatrox, Pantheon, who used to be he used to be a hard counter to Camille, but he's down to the moderate list because he's actually been nerfed a lot lately, even with his changes. And I actually didn't even update I'm glad that I updated him from my last guy, because it was the old version of Pantheon that I was talking about, not the new version. So he's essentially a moderate matchup. You don't even really see him in the top lane too much now, so he's very moderate now. Sion used to be a hard matchup, but he's pretty moderate only because you don't really see Sion too much, and just in the nature of his champion, like, he's going to be tanky, he's going to have some pressure onto you all the time, but you actually still just eventually outscale him, or you will eventually outscale him in your prime, but you just have to make sure you're very careful in the early game. Trundle tops as well. Trundle tops is not so common, but when you do see them, or actually Trundles may be a little common. I've seen Trundle tops a little often in my game, but Trundle tops is very moderate because you do outscale. He does have a ton of early game pressure though, especially since he has some self-sustain from his passive, so that's something you want to be cautious of. Now, looking back at Nasus and Kale down in the bottom, you will see that mid game, yeah, they've actually grown to be moderate, because as they're scaling up in the game, they will become moderate, and they will become hard to deal with, because those are the super carries in the game that can actually surpass you. They can actually surpass Camille, so you want to be careful of those, of how long the game is going on before they start that. Now, looking at the most effective styles for a lot of these matchups, you will see that the bread and butter style is back up there, and you will also see that the superior Camille is best for most of these styles. A vast majority of these styles, the superior Camille could even take place for a lot of them, but most of the time you can actually choose between either or, whichever you feel like is best for you to learn the matchups better. So yes, I hope this helps out in terms of knowing the moderate matchups. Now let's move on to the vicious hard matchups. Now, the hard matchups, you are almost completely at the will of the player. You cannot afford any mistakes made, or you will lose quickly and be left behind. Look at this list. It's not as long as the moderate list, but it's definitely some champions that you should be very, very careful of. Looking at the dangerous though, let's look at the dangerous first. The dangerous level champions, we have Jax, of course. Jax will always be one of the dangerous ones because Jax is one of the best scaling duelists in the game, and he also is one of the champions that can actually match up to Camille's prime. So if Jax knows how to play well early game and knows how to play to his strengths and knows when he spikes as well, because you have to be very mindful. Once he gets a certain item, he just spikes up to where it's very, very hard to deal with him in terms of fighting. So Jax will always be listed as one of the dangerous matchups, especially when it comes to late game when he's scaled up, and he's one of the champions that you have to severely outplay him to be able to win. But Jax in his nature is always going to be dangerous. Darius as well. Darius will always be one of the most dangerous matchups to Camille because in the nature of Darius, he's one of the big bullies of top lane, if not the biggest bully in top lane to begin with. You know, he has everything that he needs to kill you. He has everything he needs to have lane priority. And when he is ahead from any lead of any sort, whether it be an assist or whether it be a kill, this man just takes control of the game, and it's just not much you can do at all. He takes control. You have to be light years ahead of Darius to be able to just outright beat him. Light years. You could be ahead, but you have to be so far ahead to where it's like the Darius just can't even match your damage in any way, shape, or form, even with his passive. So you have to be super ahead of Darius to be able to actually just outright beat him. But if a Darius knows how to take control of the lane and knows how to abuse your early game sickness, you will always struggle in that lane if you don't know what you're doing. Fiora is also one of the smaller. Fiora is a smaller champion, but she definitely packs one heck of a punch, because this champion is essentially supposed to be the answer to Camille. So she's supposed to be one of the best counter picks to Camille to begin with. Fiora is one of the carries that can actually match Camille's late game as well, and even exceed it to a degree if she's really good and knows what she's doing. Her trades are supposed to be much more faster than Camille's. One of the biggest things that she has is her parry. This is also kind of similar to Jax as well. We know Jax has Counter Strike, which can block all CC. We can block some. So I'm sorry, not block all CC, block all auto attack damage. I'm sorry about that. Darius's pull, I forgot to mention, Darius has his pull that can just negate your hook shot, and of course he has the ability to, if he's in too long of a fight, he can just overpower you completely. Fiora has her parry, which means anytime you want a hook shot into Fiora, you have the risk of being stunned immediately if you land on her while she's in the middle of her parry, and that gives her free damage, free vital procs, and she will just completely just beat you from that alone. Just one mistake of being caught in her parry. Very, very unfortunate, and it's very sad. But you got to be very careful with that lane, because that is one of the most dangerous laners to face against. Gangplank is another one of the most dangerous laners to face, because Gangplank's nature, he has everything he needs to have control of the lane. He has self-sustain. He can also quickly remove your stun from your hook shot, as well as healing himself. He can constantly harass you with his Q. It gets even worse when he gets his main items, when he gets Sheen, and when he gets grass procs as well. And he also has a ton of support for his team when it comes to the barrels for team fighting, as well as his ultimate to be able to be everywhere without even needing to be anywhere, which is interesting, right? But yes, he has a ton of support for his team. So pretty much he's better. He's actually equivalent to Camille's team fighting strategies, pretty much. Like, he has a lot of support for his team, just like Camille would be able to support her team. Volibears is one of the most dangerous matchups as well. He's one of the sleeper picks, but I started to see him a bit more often now, and he is just atrocious to deal with in the lane. It makes no sense how this champion could be that strong and not even there's nothing about his kit that gives him a ton of any kind of damage boost when you really think about it. It's not like anything in his kit amplifies his damage really. He's just a big bear. He's a big bear, and then he just out tanks you. He can just out damage you through his autos and then through his bite, his E, I believe, right? Not to mention he has the ability to completely disrupt Camille from her ultimate, and he has the ability to disrupt Camille from her hook shots and her ultimates as well. So, and he has self-healing from his passive, so when he's low on health, he just gains a burst of sustain out of nowhere, and his ultimate also gives him some rapid damage, and it's just it's what a champ, man. What a champ. That's all I can say. What a champ, man. And now going over to Akali is one of the most dangerous matchups as well. Even through Akali nerfs that's been happening, I will say Akali is still one of the most dangerous matchups, because when played in the hands of someone that knows how to play Akali and knows how to play her into the Camille matchup, she definitely has a ton of early game pressure. She has a lot of kill pressure as well, and when she gets her Hex Tech Gunblade, or even if she gets halfway to it, she can still just overpower you, because she just has she just has quicker item spikes. It's just insane. And last but not least, we have Renekton, who, as you see, is permabanned by me. I permaban Renekton. I will always permaban Renekton. I don't know why they implemented the shield break technique with him when he has 50% or above Fury with his E, but I just don't like that at all. I don't want that. No, it's not his E, it's his W. I'm sorry. with his W. I said, no, I can't do that. I don't understand. This champion is already as broken as it is. For them to add a shield break mechanic to that, I said no. He gets perma-banned from that. You will understand, like when I say there was one time where I literally like was fighting a Renekton. He tower dove me. And I was for sure, 9 times out of 10, when I played against Renekton, I always knew how to trade with my shields, you know, because he didn't have that shield break mechanic before, so I knew how to properly deal with him. But he's tower diving me, and I'm like, if I was able to like really proc my shield in that moment without him breaking it, he would have lost. I would have killed him, and I would have been able to win the lane. But because of that mechanic that he has, he could just outright just tower dive me and just win most of these trades, if not almost all trades I try to do against them. And a lot of times I feel like I play against a lot of like one-trick Renektons or Renekton mains that just know how to maintain their fury and just knows how to go for, you know, go for trades and apply that pressure to me and has all that sustain from his Q. And it's just like, I can't stand Renekton, so he just gets perma-banned from me. So nope, he will never see light of day from me. But moving over to the hard list, we have, as you see, Jace. Jace is one of the hard matchups that actually, it depends on his skill level as well as the player, which he can definitely prove to be a very hard laner. He's a pretty much a bully just like Jace is to a degree. You do outscale Jace though, but it also depends on how well he does early game to be able to at least kind of match you in some way, because you will severely outscale him, but he has to severely outplay you. If he outplays you early on, then you will have a hard time even beating him even late game, because he's actually so ahead. Rengar tops is rare, a little rare, but you might see them every now and then. But Rengar tops is dangerous because of the early game that he has, constant leaps from his bush abusing and all that stuff. He has, of course, self-sustain from when he's just out of combat for a few seconds as well. And he's just got good kill potential for you, and your early game just can't match to his. So you want to play as defensive as you can. You do outscale in your prime, but you just want to play very careful in the lane. We all know the nature of Teemo. I'm not going to go any further of Teemo because this is just Teemo. We know how it is. Y'all know my stance on Teemo. I despise him as a champion. Can't stand him, but he's still a hard champion because of his blind. Unacceptable champion. Can't deal with that. Vayne tops is another one of the range top, and just like kind of equivalent to Lucian top, except she has a bit more counter. She has a bit more counter tools to Camille because she has condemn. So if you try to hook shot with Camille, if you're standing next to a wall, or if Vayne is trying to anticipate you standing next to a wall, attempted to hook shot, it will be quick on their condemns. Depends on how well they do as a player. But Vayne tops is very oppressive because she just has really good kiting. She has low cooldowns for her tumble, so she can dodge a lot of your abilities if she's really good on that. And she just has a ton of pressure to you. So she's had a ton of kill pressure to you, so you want to be very careful with that. You kind of can outscale a Vayne, kind of can. You just have to be very lucky in terms of like dealing with her late game, because a late game Vayne, she can be a force to be reckoned with if you're not careful, you know, so you want to be careful with that. Mordekaiser, I did my matchup guide against Mordekaiser. He is a hard matchup to deal with. He's not as dangerous as you might want to portray him to be, because I've actually played, like, when I started playing more and more matches of Renekton, more and more matches against Mordekaiser to understand exactly what to do against him. You know, gradually the difficulty for him dropped for me, but naturally as a champion himself, he is actually a hard counter for Camille. He's pretty much like Camille, but with just no mobility, so he's immobile, but he deals a ton of single target damage, not to mention he could trap you in his ultimate as well, which is really terrible for team fighting because he can separate you from your team and he will just forcefully try to fight you. So he's definitely one of the harder matchups for Camille. Also, Set is also can be a hard matchup for Camille. That's why I listed him as hard. For me, he's probably one of the moderate matchups, but he's definitely got a lot of kill pressure to you. He's got a lot of early game damage. He's got self-sustain as well, which is very annoying. And he actually can disrupt your mobility as well, you know, with his pull, even with his ultimate as well. And of course, the big shield he gets from his W, I believe. I haven't played Set yet, so I don't know what keys his abilities are on. So, you know, whatever ability that he gets, that big shield and just does that big haymaker, that's just stupid. It's very, very stupid to have. But And then last but not least, we see Nico. Nico is rare that you might not see. You might not see Nikos anymore. There used to be Nico tops a lot at one point in the, I believe, last season. Nico tops is actually a pretty difficult lane because they have good counter tools against Camille in terms of just keeping her at bay. They can kite her. She's one of the ranged matchups that actually has a root. She has a root. She can actually go AD as well. So you might see some on-hit Nico type of players where they go press the attack and have enhanced autos from, I believe, something about her passive that gives her bonus damage or every few hits, and then she has her roots, and then she can just constantly just keep autoing you to death and just poking you. And then she also can just ult you as well, like, you know, to kind of just keep you locked down in CC. And if you were to ever try to engage on a Nico, she would also be able to deploy her clone, which would be able to negate your hook shot trades, or to be able to negate your engage on her, because you have to have, it's like fighting a Shaco. You have a hard time with trying to figure out, okay, which one could be hers, because some people might be really good at actually disguising themselves as who they are and what the clone is. So you might fall for the clone sometimes. I admit I've done that before, you know, quite a few times and been embarrassed. So. And then also below, you see now that Nasus and Kale are now in their late game, so this is where they become hard to deal with as well, because Nasus, if he's fully stacked up or has a ton of stacks, if he's farmed up, he's also tanky to where he's not a champion that you can just one-shot anymore, since he has his ultimate that could just make him even more tankier, and he could just one-shot you from his Qs. Then you have Kale, who has her ultimate that can keep her invulnerable, but she also has incredible scaling damage now that she's in her late game prime, so now this is where it starts to get a bit harder to deal with them, so you want to make sure you don't make any mistakes against them, or don't even try to fight them, because sometimes it might not be the best bet to challenge somebody that is actually on par with you. And also the most effective styles with these with a lot of these matchups would be the bread and butter style. With most of them, if you actually have an understanding, or if you have an understanding of the matchup, even if you feel like you're gonna always struggle with it, you can still go the bread and butter style, which is pretty generic for most of them. The superior Camille is recommended. I will say the superior Camille style is recommended for the dangerous matchups. Well, some of the dangerous matchups, mostly like Jax, for instance, Darius, Volibear, and maybe even Renekton, for instance. Those will be recommended for the superior Camille. For the heal drop method, you will go even against most of the range matchups like Vayne and Nico, for instance. You can even go it against a Callies if you want to have a better time against her, or feel like you want to have like a more easier lane to be able to just out trade her with pokes damage and stuff like that. And then you would have Teemo, you go heal drop method as well. So yes, this is the hard matchup list. I hope this helps you guys out. Hope you guys learned a little bit more. Now we will move on to the unfair matchups. You are unable to outright defeat them because of their design until you're prime. These are matchups that you just can't outright beat. Like matchups that are either too tanky to be able to just fight, like for no reason at all, or it's just they have a kit that just gives them insane early damage or something to where you just can't contest with it until you actually get to your late game. Like it's ridiculous. So it's not that they can't be beaten. You can beat them given the fact, like if they play like poorly early game or such things like that, or if you get like a good amount of ganks maybe or something like that. But it's like if you get a good lead against them, you can beat them, but just in the nature, if it's an even lane, then you just can't until you're actually in your prime. So as you see, you have Cho'Gath, which is very, very annoying and very oppressive when he has his constant sustain from minions. He also he has a ton of CC to disrupt you as well. He has his silence. He also has his ultimate that just gives him increased health as well. Gives him just incredible health scaling. So he's just one of the champions you just can't beat. If he's just farming up and playing safe, you just can't really just beat his sustain. Tahm Kench, if you ever see Tahm Kenches up top, they're actually very unfair as well. And you can't even afford to even actually fight Tahm Kenches because he could just eat you. Now that the recent changes with Tahm Kenches, he actually can't apply his stun. He can't apply his stuns too much now. He can't apply his he can't eat you as much as he used to, but he's still very tanky for no reason, and this is a lane that you just can't afford to fight. You just recommend that you just farm, or maybe just go for some roams and just, you know, go for roams and just split pushing, but don't try to sit there and fight them, because their design is just not fit for you to be able to just beat yet. Maokai is another example of that. As you see, we also have Volibear back on this list as well, because Volibear's kit is unfair, actually. Not only that, is him being dangerous to deal with, it's also unfair. because he just has too much tankiness, not to mention too much damage, and also too much disrupt to you, to where you can't do much of anything until you get to your prime. Same with Malphite. Malphite is essentially supposed to be an AD counter as well, so Malphite is just a champion that you just can't outright just beat if it's even. Depends on the type of variation he's going. Sometimes they might go the maximum poke Malphite, who's maxing his Q, or they might just go full tank. Ornn as well, with the recent changes to the tank items, Ornn had become very popular at one point. So Ornn being able to scale up on armor so much, it's just like, nope. That's something that you just can't outright beat until you're prime, especially if the lane is even. Mundo, essentially, you can kind of beat him in lane, but naturally, if they're playing just like they should be, playing safe and just denying Camille the pressure that she can apply on them, then they could just be unbeatable at one point, because they're once he gets to level 6, he could just heal everything and constantly just sustain himself back up, unless you get Executioner's Calling. But you know, it's in the nature of his champ. Now, as you see, some surprising choices as well is Warwick and Nocturne. Those are essentially junglers, but you might see some games where they're actually picked for top lane, and those two laners are unfair. Warwick, for a prime example, Warwick is incredibly strong for early game in terms of his Q damage, in terms of his self-sustain, and then when he gets to level 6, he has the suppress, so he can just run you down completely. He has the ability to out-damage you completely early and maybe mid-game if you're not too careful. So that's a lane that you just can't outright defeat until you get to your maximum prime, or unless you get to at least close enough to your prime, like you know, somewhere along the lines, because he has his fear. You can't engage on, you can't even get close to him because he can fear you. He gets free procs, he gets free autos, he gets free Q bites and all that stuff, you know, and then he also heals from that. And his Q is also on a low cooldown, so he can consistently use that pretty often while your cooldowns are longer. Moving over to Nocturne. Nocturne is another pick. He's almost equivalent to Warwick, which is crazy. He's got early game damage, he's got self-sustain from his passive, he's got credible wave clear, and he's got his ultimate that just latches onto you, so he could just go from. He's also really good for Roman as well. Same with Warwick. So those two are essentially one of the sleeper picks to Camille that actually can prove to be a problem for her until she gets to her prime. This is insane. And also, you see Nasus and Kale once again. Now they are in the unfair bracket, because if the game doesn't end, we know Nasus is just a perma-scaling champion. Camille actually doesn't perma-scale. She scales high, but there's going to be a cap to where you can't buy your items anymore. But Nasus is one of the champions that will continuously scale, because he can just keep on getting stacks the longer the game continues, and he gets more and more tankier and more damaging. Kale is another one of the champions that just has the once the game doesn't end, she's going to outscale Camille actually to a degree, to be able to block all damage with her ultimate and still be able to one-shot or be able to 1v9 a whole team. So if the game doesn't end in time, those two will be a force to be reckoned with. So I hope you guys understand the unfair matchups and what to look out for and what to avoid and what to maybe dodge. So now we will move on to the way of the Heretic, aka the Steph J Millz way. The way of the Heretic, aka the Steph J Millz way. This is what I do. This is your boy Steph J Millz giving out his strategies in terms of what he does, what keystones he chooses, why he chooses them, and his rune builds, his runes, his builds, his level up focus, what abilities he maxes out, such things like that. This is me discussing that right here. And the one thing that I want to touch on first immediately is Hail of Blades Camille. If you guys have seen my montages lately, you've seen that I've been running Hail of Blades like crazy. Hail of Blades is now my most favorite keystone out of all keystones in this game. It's surprising, right, that this keystone could just magically seem like it's so, like I like this keystone, like it's so strong, like it's just amazing. Like, it amplifies the speed of Camille tenfold, incredible high speed burst, unmatchable trading, and it's underrated. If you've seen my montages, if you've seen me on stream, you will see just how well I perform with this keystone. I have done some intense training with Hail of Blades. Intense training, which means I've ran this keystone against every matchup that you can possibly think of. Every matchup. I run it even against almost every matchup as well, because I've seen the light to this keystone. I've seen the perks to it. I've seen what it does, and I see how effective it can be with her. I'm not saying that Halo Blaze should be the best keystone for her, should be the top #1, but it definitely should be a keystone worth noting. It is a keystone that has the potential to beat anybody when you play correctly with it. Any keystone you can beat anybody with if you play correctly with it, but this keystone itself, many people might doubt it, might think you don't do any damage because it doesn't amplify damage. It doesn't seem like it's going to do anything against the champions that are currently buffed up, like the current meta champions, like the juggernauts and such things that have strong early games. How can you do well with this keystone, man? If you've seen my guides, if you've seen my montage, you will see just how effective this keystone really is. It is so amazing. It's like, it makes me wonder, why did I not choose this keystone before? Like, I realized the potential that it has, and it's just incredible. So my personal choices though, for runes, I would choose Hail of Blades, I would choose Grasp of the Undying, I would actually choose Glacial Augment, which is interesting, right? I have this weird strategy where I go Glacial Augment for like a perma-slow Camille build, to where I can consistently stay on somebody and they can't escape me. Not to mention, they can't escape me, so I would be glued to them. So it's not like they can avoid, like they can kite me, because they can't move as fast as they normally would because they're constantly getting slowed. I would even combine this with like maybe Frozen Mallet or something to even furthermore add on to the slow, which is pretty crazy, right? So I've had some very interesting strategies with some of these keystones, man. So there's like a lot of interesting things that I do that might make you scratch your head. But when you try it out yourself, I promise you'll be surprised at what I'm talking about. Because I mean, having 2 million mastery points with Camille, I clearly know what I'm talking about when I say that these keystones are pretty interesting on her. And then, of course, the Arcane Comet, which is, of course, I would go for most of the range matchups, or even matchups where I feel like I just want to make the lane easier for myself, to where I just want to just poke them all day and just make it harder for them to do anything in the game. So moving over to my favorite rune path, I go Domination, which is Hail of Blaze, Taste of Blood, Ghost Poro, Relentless Hunter. Then I would go Sorcery Secondary with Transcendence and Gathering Storm. For the shards, I would go Cooldown Reduction Scaling shards, and then I would go Adaptive Force, and then I would actually go Scaling Health shard. Interesting. That's not really much of a noticeable thing, but it's just something I do because I play a pretty risky style. If you haven't seen, my style is pretty risky in terms of the way that I build. Like, it seems like I'm going to be really squishy, I'm going to be really weak, or it just seems really awkward to how I'm building, but I still perform really well with this style. So my level up focus, I actually max my Q or my W. Either or doesn't matter to me. I actually just max either or. Sometimes I might max my W for easier harassing. I might just be able to just pressure them all the time, because even though they nerfed her W, the damage it does and just the overall what it used to do, it still is very it still is definitely a good ability to actually apply pressure with, when maxed as well. And even with my Qs, I max my Q almost every matchup because I know how to trade with my Qs a lot more. So most of the time, I'm just always knowing how to just reset my autos and reset my Qs and just go in with the right time. I also know, when my Qs will start doing the damage that they should, to where I'll be able to outright just beat somebody maybe. So I usually max my Q most of the time. Now, looking over at the selective keystones, the keystones that I would select, like if I were to go anything like any other rune path, like going Precision for instance, I would go Press the Attack, or I would even go Fleet of Footwork. Notice how I leave out Conquer, because I just don't use Conquer. I don't like it. I just have a personal dislike for Conquer, for what it does, and just for me feeling like I have to stay in a fight longer. I have to stay in a fight long to get the best out of it, because essentially Camille is a diver champion. She's not a fighter, so Conquer I feel like is more for fighting champions and more for the bruiser class, and Camille's not really fit for that. But most people use Conquer anyway and feel like Conquer is just the greatest rune to use with her, so that's just them. I just pretty much have like a different route. I feel like Hail of Blades is pretty much my route when it comes to like going Conquer or Press the Attack. Like, I use that in exchange for it. Also going Overheal, Bloodline, Tenacity, and Last Stand. For looking at the Resolve, we will go Grasp, we will go Shield Bash, we will go Bone Plate and Second Wind, Overgrowth, or Unflinching. Looking at the sorcery, we would go Arcane Comet, we would go Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, Celerity, Scorch, or Gathering Storm. And then whenever I go Inspiration sometimes, for specific cases, I will go Glacial Augment, I will go Magical Footwear, I will go Futures Market, and then I will go, Approach Velocity and Cosmic Insight. And then for my shards that I would choose, I would go Scaling Cooldown Reduction, I would go the Adaptive Forces and the Scaling Health. Also looking at the Domination Rune Path, I would go Hail of Blades, Between Cheap Shot or Taste of Blood, Ghost Poro, and Relentless Hunter. Now also you look below, you can see there's my signature build. So I would build pretty much like such things like Triforce. I always build Triforce. Like I said, I never build anything without it. Sometimes you might see me go Sanguine Blade. Sanguine Blade is a very interesting item in terms of my style because of just how well it excels with Hail of Blades. So it's something that I might go from time to time. Ravenous Hydra, and most of my builds consist of just maximizing on damage as much as possible. So essentially, I'm scaling a lot harder than I normally would I'm scaling a lot harder than I normally would, and I would be able to just outright beat a lot of people, if not everybody, with the way that I play. Like just the amount of extra damage that I apply for my builds, it's incredible. So it's all just more of a personal preference though. Like you could just choose whatever you want to build. I just decided to do this because I feel like it just suits me, and I just like the way that it does. I like the way that Camille plays out with this build as well. So feel free to be very custom with it. But this is the Steph J Millz way. So you do not have to follow what Steph J Millz does at all. This is just the way he plays, and this is if you want to actually learn some things, or if you feel like you want to you want to apply his strategies to the way you play Camille, feel free. So I hope you guys learned a lot about the way of the Heretic, aka the Steph J Millz way. So now we will move on to some helpful tips to you. Now, if you want to improve with Camille, if you feel like that you just need some help with learning how to play her correctly, then one of the tips that you can follow along is to improve your trading. Knowing how to properly trade will determine the difficulty of a lane. There will be a lot of champions in the game that might excel in the early game phase, or might actually try to be so oppressive to where they want to constantly fight you. But you have the ability to be able to know how to actually trade back and actually be able to tolerate them. So a lot of times in the early game, nobody's as strong as they really are until they get their items. So you have the ability to actually just stand toe to toe with most people, knowing how to trade effectively. The more you understand the pattern of your opponent, the more you'll know how to take advantage of their openings. So there will be moments where you'll see somebody might be very oppressive, they might try to fight you, but you will understand when they fight you, they leave themselves open. They leave themselves at a disadvantage. So they might have no cooldowns for an ability, or they might have no mobility for a time being, to where you'll be able to be an opportunist and take advantage of that. Take advantage of their abilities being on cooldown, to where you'll be able to fight them and be able to actually trade effectively with them, to where you'll actually win more and you won't lose more. You'll win more and you'll lose less. Sorry about that. Freezing up a little bit. So where you'll be able to win more and lose less. There are certain variations that give you better leverage against certain matchups than others. So when you go the bread and butter build, the general variation, which is usable through most matchups, so if you know how to trade with that, then you will be fine. The superior Camille is a situational variation usable through bruisers, tanks, and oppressive laners. So if you're going against somebody that you feel like is a hard laner for you, if you're having difficult times, and you feel like the general variation is just not effective for you because you feel a little bit too squishy, then you can go to Superior Camille to have more durability, to be able to take more damage, take more punishment, to be able to understand that, okay, this is something I shouldn't do, because if I didn't have this, I would be punished a lot more, and I would actually be losing a lot more. The heal drop method is also another situational variation usable through ranged and immobile laners. So a lot of ranged top laners, like I said, like Lucian for instance, Vayne, Teemos, or Quinns for instance, like those are more so for being able to just apply pressure to them, because they're going to poke you a lot, so you'll be able to return that poke damage to them, and you'll also be able to make the lane a lot easier for yourself, because you won't have a ton of pressure on you, because you'll be able to turn the tides on them, because you know how to tolerate them and know how to actually respond to when they put themselves at a disadvantage. So of course you want to definitely take note of stuff like that. Moving on. Another helpful tip is to play to your strengths. Be aware of your team's synergy. As Camille is relatively versatile with all champions, you must decide what the best solution for a victory will be. So knowing your team comp is also something that you have to pay attention to when you it's something you have to pay attention to when you actually are in champ select. So being aware of what kind of team comp that you have, whether it be a team comp that's really good for team fighting, whether if you have a strong front line or if you have a team that actually scales really well into late game just like you, or you have a team that has good early game pressure, that way you can actually snowball off that pressure, or if you have a team that just simply is just good for like split pushing or taking control of the lanes and such things like that. You know, you want to be very aware of the team comp that you have. So to know when it's necessary to team fight or to even split push, if your team composition excels in grouping, if you see your team composition excels for grouping or objectives and playmaking, so when your team is essentially good, or when your team is essentially is strong for that, you want to group with your team as much as you can. You can still apply pressure to the side lanes as well to make the pressure even harder for the enemy team, but for the most part, you know, you're the strongest in your numbers. So you want to definitely be able to make sure that you are grouped together when it's necessary. To split push though, that's if the enemy team excels at grouping or are taking control of the game. So if they're taking control of too many objectives, if they're taking control of the game, if they're picking off your teammates a little too much and you feel like their strength is in their numbers, you want to be able to divert them from them. You want to be able to divert them to the different lanes, because you're applying the pressure to the lanes all the time, to where you're up in top lane while they're trying to have priority over a dragon, or if you're in bot lane where they're trying to have priority over the Baron, and you can actually you're just waiting to teleport to them as well. So those are definitely some helpful tips in terms of knowing when the team fight and knowing when to split push. So this should definitely help you play to your strengths and help you be very aware of it. Now let's move on. Another helpful tip is to play safe. The key to defeating Camille is to apply enough pressure to shut her down early and prevent her from reaching her prime. This means you must discipline yourself to deny farm when required, be cautious of ganks and roams and unnecessary fights. So this goes in part with knowing how to trade with your opponent, because you don't want to be in too long of a trade with somebody to where you allow yourself to be at a disadvantage, to where you've been blowing your cooldowns, to where now you're vulnerable to a jungle gank, you're vulnerable to somebody roaming, or you're just vulnerable to your opponent just overpowering you because their cooldowns are faster, or they're able to do damage at a quick and fast pace and such things like that. Also being aware, even as the game progresses on, you want to watch your positioning at all times, because sometimes if you get caught at the wrong position, if you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, then it could definitely be a problem for you. It could also be a contributing factor as to why you will eventually lose the game, because you were getting too caught and you wasn't playing too safe, and you wasn't listening to your team's calls when they told you to go back or not overstay and such things like that. So that's something you want to definitely pay attention for. Because when Camille loses early, Camille has a hard time with reaching her prime. That means when everybody is ahead of Camille, Camille can't do anything. We discussed this earlier before when we said when Camille is far behind, she is behind, and she is just next to useless to be able to do anything to be able to come back. So you have to make sure you're playing very, very careful. Don't allow yourself to stay in fights for too long unless you see the opportunity to possibly go for the kill. But you want to definitely always play. Most of the time, I play defensive all the time. I play defensive most of the time. That's more so the reason why I say I'm a KDA player, because I'm very, very defensive. I try my best not to put myself in sticky situations, or not to leave myself in sticky situations where if I were to get shut down and lose a bounty on me and give it to someone that's dangerous to have bounties with, or to give like some incredible gold lead to where they're actually able to turn around and carry the game, then I would look at myself like I knew I should have played a bit safer, to where this wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't have been a problem if I did play safe, you know, and such things like that. Though as Camille, you have the potential to save yourself in almost any circumstance. So Camille has the ability to, like I said, buffer a lot of crowd control abilities. So she has the potential to get herself a lot of sticky situations. As you've seen, I've pulled off some crazy escapes and interesting hook shots and just, you know, moments where you felt like I should have been dead, you know, like I definitely should have been dead, but with quick reaction and, you know, being very, very safe with my abilities, usage as well, I was able to pull off some crazy escapes. So, you know, just knowing how to play safe is one of the most vital things with Camille. And hopefully this will definitely help you improve as a Camille player and also help you improve as a player in general. So thank you guys for watching. I definitely hope that you guys enjoyed this new revamped guide. I appreciate it so much, man. I thank you guys for all the love and support. Be sure to check me out on twitch.tv/Steph J Millz. Be sure to look out for stream highlights on the YouTube channel. Be sure to hit that subscribe button as well. Show us some love for your boy Steph J Millz. If you want to see some more gameplay, tutorial videos, you want to see funny moments and even commentaries and such things, feel free to enjoy the stream. Feel free to enjoy the YouTube channel and Twitch channel as well. Thank you guys. I hope this guys help you guys out. I hope you guys do so well in the season 10. And also, we will definitely make sure that this guide stays updated for any further changes. If you want to contribute to this guide, be sure to leave a comment in the comment section below. And I will see you guys in the next video, man. Take care of yourselves. I'm out.